John Edwards. All right, now, first of all, of course, as I told you, is the child his? Of course! We had an affair with Riel Hunter. He came out and admitted the affair and then came out and said, oh, but the kid's not mine. I know it's not mine. I was like, how do you know it's not yours? You had an affair with her, right? And it was an absolutely ridiculous proposition. Besides, it was John Edwards lies all the time, right? So I came out on the show and I pounded the gavel and I said, hell no. Okay, if you go on the Maury Povich show, he will tell you, you are the father. Okay, and so now we find out news that he's considering admitting that he's the father. Of course, of course, of course. All right, now, but that's not enough to even do the story. It's so obvious. But some details are coming out. And one of his trusted associates, the guy who handled Riel Hunter for him, got her the house and made all the arrangements. They've had a falling out. So he's going to write a book about how all this went down. And he tells some interesting details, including two of the top political donors for John Edwards secretly funneling money to Riel Hunter, the mistress that you see there, so that they could make this problem go away and communicate with the candidate as little as possible to make sure that his hands are clean on it, right? But that this is how things get done, and I found that really interesting. One of them is like a 95-year-old lady from Manhattan. Another one's someone who happened to pass away since then. But that when somebody gets in trouble, they have a way of cleaning this stuff up. So they do that with their money, but that's gone now. And now the guy who was one of his advisors writing this book and telling all this stuff. But here comes the devastating detail. He apparently had promised Riel Hunter, don't worry, when my wife dies, we'll have a rooftop wedding and I'll have the Dave Matthews Band there. That's as bad as it gets, man. Now, look, I give politicians generally a pass on affairs unless they've been hypocrites about it. To some degree, Spitzer was. He went after prostitution rings, and then he was in a prostitution ring. He's a Democrat. And then, of course, the Republicans who bash gays and then suck off dudes in bathrooms. Okay, I'm just keeping it real. That's what's happening, okay? Now, but if they have an affair and they're not hypocritical, okay, it doesn't have anything to do with their job, okay? But this is beyond the bounds of reason. This dude's a bad guy, man. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to judge him on that. Okay, I'm not a big favor of being judgmental, but this is way, way too much. That's why, as Edwards was so-called the most progressive candidate throughout the primaries, I was like, I couldn't pull the trigger. I'm like, there's something wrong with that guy. And what was wrong with him was that I remembered that when he was in the Senate from North Carolina, he was one of the more conservative Democrats. And then he goes to run for, office in 2004, and he's still pretty conservative, and he apparently didn't listen to a word his presidential candidate said when he was a vice presidential candidate. He's all over the board, and then in 2008 when he runs, he's the most progressive guy you ever seen. It just seemed way too convenient. And it turns out that he's a congenital liar and a really bad dude at that. So, yeah, if John Edwards thought he had a political career before, I can guarantee you he doesn't have one now. You're done, son. Move it along. Nobody's interested in that.